Hi, everyone. Um, I'm very happy today to introduce Joshua Bennett to the audience. I want everybody to know that this is being live streamed and will appear later on our YouTube channel. In a couple of weeks, you'll see this on YouTube channel, and you'll be able to go on and uh, watch it again if you want, or tell other people about it and tell them to watch. We do have a whole series of uh, videos on YouTube of former readers at the Poetry Center. Before I introduce Joshua, I do want to say that all our programs are made possible by grants from the New Jersey State Council on the Arts, the NEA, the individual donations and legacies, and the Passaic County Community College, which gives us a lot of in-kind donations and which allows us to use this beautiful building for our programs. Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Joshua Bennett, who is a professor of literature and distinguished chair of the humanities at MIT. He's the author of 5 books of poetry, criticism, and narrative nonfiction: Spoken Word, A Cultural History, NOPS 2023, The Study of Human Life, Penguin 2022, which won the Patterson Poetry Prize and was longlisted for the Griffin International Poetry Prize, and is currently being adapted for television in collaboration with Warner Brothers Studios. Ode Penguin 2020 was a finalist for the New England Book Award, being properly once myself, Harvard University Press 2020, William winner of the MLA William Sanford Scarborough Prize and the Sobney School Penguin 2016, winner of the National Poetry Prize and finalist for an NAACP Image Award. He's the founder and editor of Minor Notes, a Penguin classic book series dedicated to minor poets within the Black expressive tradition. He lives in Massachusetts with his family, and I'm very pleased to present his poem to you today, his reading. Let's welcome Joshua Bennett.
Thank you all so much. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Maria. And thank you to the Poetry Center for your continued support. I don't know if you all saw my UK publisher, Bloomsbury, they just issued a new edition of The Study of Human Life. And right there on the front, you could see it says winner of the
Oh,
2023.
wonderful.
Yeah. So we're international now. We're really doing our thing. So I wanted to just thank you all because it means a lot, to have institutions like you all recognize the work, but also create opportunities for me to do things like these workshops, some of which have had wonderful poets that have attended more than one. And it's good to feel like the extended family just keeps growing larger and larger. Um, and so in that vein, and also, yeah, the last sentence in my bio is about family. So I do want to start with a poem about family, and I'll end with one as well. So this poem is called Dad Poem Number 10. It was published in the New Yorker about 2 years ago. And one of the many cool things about that is that it was one of the first times that I got a ton of kind of mail about a poem. And one of the people who wrote to me was an Apple historian named John in Maine, who said that anytime I was hungry, me and the family could come up to visit him. And I imagine he has other things besides apples up there. But I thought it was very sweet. And in this poem, which is not only about apples, I think you'll be able to see why we connected around that. So this is Dad Poem number 10. You can't have apples with everything, we say to our son over breakfast, but that's not technically true. He knows this, I suspect, though his face reflects a certain understanding, as if he's willing to negotiate. Before we moved here, I knew so little of apples, their untamed array of shapes and names, ginger gold, honey crisp, crispin, Cortland, cameo, both Rome and Empire somehow, which feels like it must be an inside joke between members of the committee. Fuji, wine sap, ruby frost, which could be either a miracle or a plague. I can't decide which. Paula Red is a Soviet secret agent. Envy is a deadly sin. Holstein and Ambrosia have skin like a storm on a televised map. On the ride upstate to the orchard, I recount all the types to myself in a private game. Select my prize in advance. Bags filled with liberty and jazz will be my aims, like any good American. 2 months earlier, it is not yet my birthday. I am in an office in Brighton. The doctor has never seen a case quite like mine. During the test, I make every task a language game, even the ones with semicircles and blocks. This part of my mind is hypercharged, he says, like a quasar or loving dispute. That morning, I cut a Brayburn into eighths and cast the pieces into a small blue bowl, a handful of rowboats swaying. At the orchard, we are stars set loose across the mind of a boy in a field on his back, dreaming with both eyes open. We run for hours. We gather enough apples to sate ourselves for weeks on nothing but their cold red wealth. What marvels! This most metaphorical of fruits, Newtonian, Edenic, pure delight, mighty and bright, and the orchard, like a coliseum of planets you could hold in your hand. All right. Oh, thank you all. I appreciate that. All right. This next poem, it's from my grandmother, who I mean 2020 was a surreal time for so many reasons, but as you'll hear in the poem in a second, around the time that my wife Pam and I realized my son August was coming into the world, my grandmother passed away, and we had to watch her funeral on Zoom. And so it was this very interesting time of both profound intimacy, frankly, because it was just me and Pam all day. I mean, for those of you who remember, whoever was in your pod, you were around them 24/7, pretty much. And also, there was just this irreconcilable distance between myself and almost everyone else in my life, including my grandmother, without whom I cannot imagine becoming a poet. She used to host these talent shows on Christmas in her apartment in the South Bronx, right off of Story Avenue, of all things. And they were talent shows in name, but really they were just about opportunities for the kids to share things. So you really could present anything you wanted as a talent. You could recite a Bible verse, you could sing a song. I used to do Bobby Brown choreography, actually. I didn't really bring poems to those things. But the lesson I got from it actually wasn't just about aesthetic excellence. It was that if you made a mistake, people would cover for you, which is a really incredible lesson that I got. If you forgot the steps to a dance or you forgot the words to a verse that people knew, they would shout it out or they would help you along in the process. And, I teach at MIT, which is a place that's filled with students who have been raised in a perfectionist culture where you cannot make mistakes. The average SAT score at MIT is a 1600, right? Which is perfect. You've got nothing wrong, right? And so I've just been thinking about that a lot, about what it means to invite students along on the adventure of poetry, which is not only certainly not about never making mistakes, whatever that would mean in the context of poems, but being willing actually to constantly make yourself open to misreadings or to people not really getting what you were after or not understanding who you are or what you were trying to put out into the world. And I'm really thankful that my grandmother laid that foundation for me to realize that even if I wasn't always understood by the world, there were people who loved me, and that would never have anything to do with how smart or talented I was. So this is a dad poem number 3, ultrasound number 2, with a line from Gwendolyn Brooks. Months into the plague now, I'm disallowed entry even into the waiting room with mom, escorted outside instead by men armed only with guns and bottles of hand sanitizer, their entire countenance its own American metaphor. So the first time I see you in full force, I am pacing maniacally up and down the block outside, FaceTiming the radiologist and your mother too, her arm angled like a cellist to help me see. We are dazzled by the sight of each bone in your feet, the pulsing black archipelago of your heart, your fists in front of your face like mine when I was only just born, 10 times as big as you are now. Your great grandmother called me Tyson the moment she saw this pose, prefigured a boy built for conflict, her barbarous and metal little man. She leaves the world only months after we learn you are entering into it, and her mind the year before that. In the dementia's final days, she envisions herself as a girl of 17, running through fields of strawberries, unfettered as a kingfisher. I watch her stance and imagine her laughter echoing back across the ages. You, her youngest descendant born into freedom, our littlest burden lifter, world beater, avant-garde percussionist, swinging darkness into song. All right, so those first two poems are from my last full collection, The Study of Human Life. I have a new book that's forthcoming from Penguin called We, the People of the United States of America. And really a big part of what I'm trying to do is build on this vision of Gwendolyn Brooks's we and the kind of national we, but maybe also an interstellar we. I'm really interested in Sun Ra and Mae Jemison and the late Nikki Giovanni, may she rest, all of whom are interested in Mars and Saturn. Sun Ra actually said he was from Saturn. His birth certificate said he was from Alabama, but it's fine. I really like the other story too. So this is one of the kind of title poems from that collection, and it's called We, and it's about growing up in Yonkers, New York. We we grew up listening to the gossip of elders in crowded salons, the Holy Spirit, Hot 97, our guts drum major signaling whether to run left or right when a bullet's ricochet cracked the nighttime air. Jokes about our hair, mama's weight, our place in the great graph of human potential. We slap boxed until it turned to scrapping unexpectedly. Scuffles blossoming from schoolyard play we claimed was meant to enhance precision, little else. We had no good words for wealth, no trust in arbitrary rules or sense of power beyond the kinds that shaped our lives within discernible bounds. The belt, the badge, shoe boxes underneath the bed which held abuela's savings, first poems, the heels our mothers once wore to shuffle the shine off the floor of a disco spot downtown, where working people went to let the stress of day, last shift's weight, evaporate. We knew the cool ambrosia of hydrant water, how, without it, we might not have survived the height of July's brutality. We learned Spanish to talk to girlfriends' mothers via landline, ask permission to speak for a half hour after school para discutir la tarea, or some other benevolent, though transparently false claim. We dreamt of flight and heavyweight fights and playing our latest hits on late night TV, crossing up small forwards on the NBA on NBC with our uncles watching, their voices so loud the neighbors assumed someone must have lost a bet. We imagined a world without debt, or early death, or stress so heavy the mind must be lifted elsewhere to bear it and yet persist. We were latchkey kids, troubadours, substitute parents at 14, teaching little brothers to read in long divide and ride the bus home alone in time to reach the front door just before dark, when the world put on another face so we did too. And with masks and wigs we got from grandma, devised productions to fill the day's remainder, to command the language we inherited to live anew, or else fail magnificently at trying to say what we held most dear, but could not yet sketch onto the palimpsest of the world as we knew it. All right. So a number of the rest of these poems are going to have titles taken from various cities, and that's because I'm trying to do a couple things. One, it's a big part of the book is a kind of epic poem where each of the 50 states has its own poem. So I'm going to read my poem for Florida, which is called Eatonville, Florida. It's for Zora Neale Hurston, who hails from there. And she has an essay called How It Feels to Be Colored Me, which is beautiful for all sorts of reasons. But one of the reasons I love to teach it is that one of the center kind of points of the essay, it's about her getting a scholarship to leave her hometown of Eatonville to go to Jacksonville, to go to private school. And for my students, I imagine, I hope this resonates in a couple of ways. As Araceli Escamilla says, sometimes, she talks about distance in the name of opportunity, but I'm also really interested in distance as the name of opportunity, and how for many of us who come from sort of low income backgrounds, in the name of pursuing a certain kind of education or various economic opportunities, we're asked not only to leave the neighborhoods that helped create us, but also really to disavow any number of cultural norms that also shaped us and maybe even shaped the things that certain institutions say that they love about us, like our unique writing styles or the way we teach, how we write about the art of teaching and why it matters, as if those things could be separated. So, yeah, this is Eatonville, Florida. And then I'll read a couple more. For our purposes, we begin with the eternal feminine and its string of beads, end with you as a girl in Eatonville, days before you board a boat to cross the river, leapfrogging the invisible partition that separates your hometown from Jacksonville and its caverns full of cash, the haywire soundscape you once adored, and a private school scholarship to supercharge your future. The tenor of the underlying metaphor becomes clear only once I am older, preparing to teach your essay to a classroom full of engineers, their palms pressed directly to the pulse of whatever our species is soon to become. Your journey was a map of the modern mind's uncountable transformations, traversing the water from home, a place named for the man who helped your ancestors set its silver gray foundations, to the big city, bearing a sigil of wholesale slaughter, thousands destroyed in the name of a nation's blood-drenched invention. Cosmic Zora, we call to you now from across the flecked darkness, arms filled with pages blank as bone, searching for the words we need, but cannot hold and remain as we are. Do we have any librarians in the building? Just out of curiosity. Do we have anyone in the building who loves librarians or who's had a librarian in their life that was influential? Okay, fantastic. Librarians changed my life, in case that's not obvious. The first poetry slam I ever attended was in a library, which is interesting. It seems almost paradoxical in a way. I'm still not entirely sure why they let that happen. A poetry slam is a rather loud occasion if any of you haven't been to one before. But when I was 11 years old, the Yonkers Public Library hosted a poetry slam. They let me sign up as an 11-year-old, which also doesn't make sense because everyone else was an adult. But I got second place, and I still have the trophy actually in my house. I'm trying to think, is it in the office still? No, I think it's in storage right now. But my mom recently sent it home because I'm in that stage of life where my parents are sending everything from New York back to me because they don't want it in the house anymore. But one of the many beautiful things about that occasion was that it just taught me something about the relationship between literature and life, and the idea that it is important, of course, to be in a quiet, meditative space in a library, but also that literature is very much alive. It's very much present. And it's always already an occasion for people to connect to each other across great distance. And so, yeah, this is about a librarian who I admire a great deal named Anne Spencer, who is also a very talented poet. And her husband, Edward Spencer, built her a half-acre enclosed garden on their property in Lynchburg, Virginia, which you'll hear a bit about in the poem. But I find really fascinating, in part because part of why I think they built it that way is it looked like people were just coming over for dinner parties, when I think actually what folks like Paul Robeson and Zora Neale Hurston and James Weldon Johnson were doing over there was imagining another world. So this poem, Lynchburg, Virginia, is for her. Also, its subtitle is The Beginnings of Agriculture, lines 118 through 159. And that's because 15 out of the 50 poems are directly inspired by Virgil's Georgics, which I was first taught by Susan Stewart back in graduate school. And I thought the poems were super interesting back then. But what didn't immediately strike me um, were the kind of creative connections. So you heard a little bit about that field of strawberries and my grandmother earlier. That's a true story. She met my grandfather when they were sharecroppers in North Carolina, and they met in a strawberry field. And I think a lot about learning that story and hearing about the beauty of the field, which I think is really interesting, and the redness of the field, and the idea that even in unthinkable circumstances, beauty is possible. So, this is Lynchburg, Virginia. Before Jupiter's time, no farmers worked the land, or so we are told, though we must imagine scores of poets honing songs in sugar fields, underground, held within the belly of ships, prophets of an age before our inner worlds might manifest on paper, and the sacred bard behind the words survive. Hence, the standard becomes subterfuge, concealment. A century and a half passes between Hammond's first lines in print and Anne Spencer's questing, her timeless directive, let me learn now where beauty is, and preserve it by whatever means available, inventing new ones even, if the methods at hand are insufficient or require we lose our sense of what it means to amplify the life, to see the boy in chains and know there is an endlessness in him the present obscures. At their home in Lynchburg, Edward Spencer builds for his beloved an enclosed garden, half an acre, where the titans of their day meet and map another vision of their world within the veil. James Weldon Johnson, Paul Robeson, W.E.B. Du Bois all drink and dance, conjuring the future phrase by phrase. And Anne, the chambers of her mind filled with flowers, nasturtium and hollyhock, germander, bergamot, turtlehead, butterfly weed, book after book bursting with petals and stems, she shares with the children levitating through the library at Dunbar High School, where she guards meticulously the rolling record of our travails in overcoming. There is a story they are weaving across generations running parallel to one another. They share a living dream in that building on 12th and Polk Street, behind the brick. Yes, those words they etch onto notebooks and the illuminated air are incantations, summoning unthinkable color from stone. All right. So I think I'll read two more. Yeah, I'm going to read a poem about Prince. Okay, so this is my Minnesota poem, and it's called Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's for Prince. And then I'll read two more short ones, and then we're out of here. Minneapolis, Minnesota. Arrangements of amethyst. Clouds of lavender mist emanate from the incandescent sage on stage as he narrates the elsewhere he hails from at a pace best described as peripatetic. Kinesthetic genius unfolding behind a white guitar, microphone stand, whatever metal medium the bard selects to let this latest epic levitate through. At Super Bowl 41, he collaborates with the Rainstorm. Alongside MJ, he shreds, goes shirtless, growls like a jaguar, crashes a lamppost. Yes, in blurred footage, he is a violet silhouette. Violins pirouette in the background while the man paints landscapes of incalculable desire. Though his art, in a way, is the swing between release and restraint, that line in the air where the human body breaks into orchard at the touch of another, or the thought of it even, the sound that brings the feeling home to live with you and transform what you held to be true into something more lovely and strange. All right, last two poems. So this poem was actually in Best American Poetry this year, which I'm really proud of, in no small part because it's, I think, the only poem I've ever written where Mint Condition makes an appearance. And Mint Condition is one of my two favorite American bands of all time. It's them and the Beach Boys. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mint Condition, please go listen to them when you get off of this Zoom call, especially You Send Me Swingin', which I will argue is top three R&B songs ever made. So please listen to that. But I guess it's also about what I've been trying to accomplish over the past 5 or 6 years or so, which is aspire toward the universal while telling the particular stories of myself and my family, you know. So this is first philosophy. What is your all-time favorite phenomenon? Mine is when the error is as lovely as the aim. The other day, my wife texts me, "Love thy baby," like a contemporary commandment. Later, she explains that she meant to write, "Love that baby," in response to a Mint Condition song I sent that morning, but I can't let the first phrase go. It reminds me of those older saints on Sunday saying, "Look at God," whenever they were interrupted by transcendent beauty. I tried and did not see him, nor dare to ask where I might search. But I cherished the lesson, took personally that charge to study the invisible, call forward its power through chant or speech, a distinct vocal pattern or arrangement of keys, and the spirit would cast its fathomless cloak over us, make us glow. At home, we worshipped precision, children honed by hot combs and ironing boards, perfect grades, our family name a banner we carried in our war against the outside world. How did I get here? This soft blue house in Massachusetts, my hand against the Japanese maple outside to better hear its wisdom, son singing ballads in his toddler Esperanto downstairs as I try to compose the story of our arrival. Getting the details wrong, no doubt, though that melody is unmistakable, clear from all those dreams dueling in the air. Thank you all. All right, and I will close out with this poem, which I wrote for that toddler in that poem when he was a newborn, and in a moment of my life where it was complicated because I was not sleeping at all. I did not really sleep for like a year. And one of the many things that happens to you when you don't sleep for a year is you just forget stuff all the time. And trying to be eloquent at the drop of a hat, I'm not going to say it's near impossible. I'm sure there are people that do it all across the world. I was simply not really capable of that. And so I was showing up to lectures at Dartmouth. Sometimes, I mean, on more than one occasion, I think, with my son actually in my arms, which was interesting, but really trying to figure out what it would mean to lean into the grace of my students, to understand that I was a human being in the midst of this transformative moment in my life who was really trying to pull a bunch of things together at once. And I also had to wrestle with the fact that it had come to be that what I valued most about myself was how smart I could sound in public. And I think being a new parent kind of forced me to think about something else, namely keeping this small new organism alive, right? So this is in part about that, but also about the beauty and deep joy of that moment, which before my daughter June got here was not like anything I'd ever experienced before. My two kids are very different, which is the other thing you learn about being a parent is that you don't really just get to run it back, as far as I can tell. Apparently, every baby is their own unique person with their own personality and set of needs and wants and dreams. So that's been kind of cool too, is that life will take you out of routine. So it has its uses, but you always got to be ready to improvise, like Monk and others teach us. So this is Dad poem number 12, The New Temporality. No poems, not even one, since the minute you were born. Now I live the thing that was the writing more intensely alongside you each day. Hours blur and are measured only in feedings, naps just quick enough to not subtract from your later dreaming. Mom and I divide the night into shifts, dance through the fog of sleep deficits doctors say we won't feel the weight of until wintertime. So what? Our home glows like a field of rushes, moonlight ensnared in their flaxen heads. Most early mornings with you are mine. We play the elevator game and improvise lyrics, rhyming August with raucous, florist, flawless. As I write this, you rest in a graphite gray carrier on my chest, your thinking adorned with language that obeys no order my calcified mind can express. Tomorrow, I will do the thing where I make my voice sound like a trombone, and I hope you like it as much as you did today. There is no sorrow I can easily recall. I have consecrated my life. Thank you all.
Mute myself. I want to say that I was clapping, but obviously our sound was off. But that was a wonderful reading, Jericho, and I love the things you say in between. Did I call you Jericho again? Damn, I keep wanting to make you
We all love Derek.
Jericho Brown. You'll have to call him and say, she kept calling me by your name, the idiot. Sorry, Joshua.
We'll invite him and we'll do a reading together next
Yeah,
time.
oh, he's so wonderful, isn't he? You would be perfect together, actually. And I really enjoyed your reading very much, Joshua. Forgive me that I keep saying his name, and it happens when you're old. Anyway, I'm very happy to have had you here today to read to people, to give you a wonderful workshop, which I think people enjoyed very much. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please be sure to indicate that you liked it. And if you can, where you're from, because we're really being pushed by our grantors to find out where our audience comes from. So if you could list where you come from when you say that you're watching the video, I would really appreciate it, because we need people from a lot of different parts of our state and the country. Thank you so much, Joshua.
Thank you to everyone from the workshop too for hanging
Yeah,
out.
they were wonderful, weren't they? We have the
Amazing.
best people, and I'm really grateful. I mean, I started this in 1979, really, and that's how ancient I am. And it's still going, and it's so wonderful that it's still going, and it's still perfect. Like today was perfect, I have to tell you. Wonderful. I love the poems to your children, and I just love your poems in general. They're wonderful. As soon as I heard you the first time, I knew I had to bring you back. So I'm glad you could be with us. And tell those engineers at MIT they have to really learn the intelligence of the heart and the gut before anything else. Otherwise, they become robots, and we don't need any more robots. We have enough.
Yeah,
Anyway, everybody, let's give them a round of applause. If you unmute yourself, well, I'm clapping for you anyway. They probably are too, but just like me, I couldn't get myself unmuted so I could clap for you. Thanks so much. It was wonderful. Give those babies a hug, and the beautiful wife a hug as well. And I'll see you, I hope, soon.
Yeah. Thanks, y'all. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Thank you. Wonderful.
Wonderful. He was wonderful. He was. Okay, I have to figure out how to